Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This one has been in the making for 2 years or so, but the time has come. We may have already sent you an email about this already, but today we're talking about DNA for our new DNA test. Today, Shayne's going to go through the report and all of the information that goes behind, like what you can do for your, patient and how to read it, stuff like that. Because the whole thing is, it's a really quick way to help you implement basically this DNA process into your practice to get a more targeted approach in how you utilize supplements, dietary, lifestyle recommendations. So he's going to go through that with you today. He's also going to show you some of the resources that we've already created during the latter portion of the DNA webinar with him. And stay tuned all the way to the end, because one of you will be getting a free DNA test kit, and 5 will be receiving some of a free blue poo test for you to try. So stick around for that, because we'll put you and we'll raffle basically that off to, for whoever was in all the way to the end for this webinar. And if you have questions, throw them up into the chat, because we will see those. The Q&A, not the chat, the Q&A, sorry. Because there's two things. So the Q&A is the ones that we'll keep, because if we don't get to it today with Shayne, he'll be able to answer that question later. We'll be able to send you emails directly for any of those questions. So put that into the Q&A. But I think that, is the gist of it. So I'll get everything over to Shayne so that he can explain this whole DNA process and how great it is.
Right on. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Transfer successful. He's right. So Matt's absolutely right. This has been quite the project. It's been phenomenally difficult, but it's been immensely successful in the sense that we've learned so much about how to manage DNA, what DNA is good for, why can we leverage DNA better now than we could when it first became really a novel and exciting technique many years ago. And many of you probably remember, because I became excited about it in 2006 during the revolution. And I'm grateful for it, because it led us into the microbiome as well as the DNA. But now is the time. The time is we have the detail and the ability to do the types of sequencing that give us the information for understanding the nuances or the DNA genes and their gene expression, and how a clinician can leverage this to take advantage of natural products, nutrition, lifestyle, and certainly our supplements, because, I'm biased that way. And of course, that's my disclaimer. But this DNA is much more than that. It's a way for you to bring this kind of testing into your clinic. It's not terribly expensive, and it is a one-time test, but years and years worth of data mining for the patient. And we'll get into what I mean by that later, but this is something that I absolutely believe and I'm already seeing as it's part of the journey into the next level of our personalized health and wellness models. So if we don't embrace it now, it will ultimately be something that patients are going to pressure the clinicians for, because it will be part of the wellness journey. Not unlike we say, change your diet, eat a healthy diet, eat more organic, improve your blood results by doing blood testing or other types of tests that are being driven by not only the technology and the clinicians, but also by the patients. They are pressuring the system to get better at helping them, because there are so many gaps in knowledge, and the DNA fills one of those gaps. So I want you to think of this in two ways as I navigate what the tools we have, what we've done, how we're going to bring it to you, and how we're going to help you along the way, both from a scientific standpoint as well as from a clinical or a business standpoint. We want you to succeed using this test, and we want you to be able to use this test to benefit the patients without question. Those are two goals that we have in launching this. So as I get into this, I want to jump into our screen share real quick and begin with the test itself. So there's a couple of things that we want to be mindful of regarding the implementation of the test. So we want this to go through clinicians. And so there's this extra website. This is the laboratory website that allows us to have you log in and analyze the DNA. The step before this, we'll circle back just as a reminder, but you purchase the actual kit through the Systemic Alimentum website or on the phone or email, however you work with our sales and customer service team. The kit itself is purchased through Systemic Alimentum. Once they have the kit, whether it be a clinic a patient you've sent it to, or you keep it in the clinic and hand it out, the kit itself has directions inside of it. And we'll look at some videos regarding how to go through that carefully, but they go to this nbresults.com. nbresults.com is where we register the kit. And it's also the laboratory that's in charge of sequencing and creating the data that is then used to become the clinical tool that you all want to end up with for each patient. So this is the main landing page for the website. You get here, and as I mentioned, it's NB results. And then we go to the dashboard. So you can see, I should first say that there is a buy now, but that's just send you back to Systemic. There's some other things the lab does, but it sends you back to Systemic. These, if you recall, most of the testing is designed by the lab and then handed off to Systemic and Alimentum. That's really the design. We have the lab to create it, Systemic and Alimentum to execute it. The first thing we want to do is go to the dashboard. You can see it up here. Click on the dashboard. It takes you to, once you've logged in, now there is a login page. If I wouldn't have already logged in, it would have prompted me to do the login. I've skipped that step, but again, we have videos. Once we go to this login page, we can see under the dashboard, we have my reports, go to my reports, or go to account details. Of course, the first thing you're going to want to do the patient's going to do is go to my reports. They go to their reports. This is their kit ID. I'm not going to go through the registration process in detail because we have really detailed videos for that. But when you register your kit, it becomes uniquely that patient's kit. And that's where the security is built in, the confidentiality. These are all built into this particular website because these are HIPAA compliant tools as well as highly secure tools for those of you that have any concern regarding the data. And that's why we've done it in a two-step process. Let me take a minute to just take a step back as well. Quick reminder, we buy the kit from Systemic Alimentum. We give it to the patient or to whomever, even if you want to use it yourself. Once that kit arrives into your possession, you log in or create a login at nbresults.com. Once you're logged in and you've created a login, you go through the process of swabbing, entering your code, answering some questions, and that initiates the testing. Once you send that test off, there's a provided envelope for the sample. You send it off to the lab. It gets sequenced in 4 to 6 weeks. And then the data arrives back. Some of you are going to be wondering about the 4 to 6 weeks. How this works is once you sent that off, that's when the clock starts ticking. When you buy the test kit, we can't start the clock until that test kit has been swabbed and sent to the laboratory. If you leave it in your office for a couple of weeks or any of those time frames, they don't count in that process. Once the lab does the sequencing, that part of the clock is probably one of the more time consuming. And I want you to keep in mind that we run DNA tests in batches. So during that 4 to 6 week period, if your kit arrives early as one of the 96 samples we can run at a time, you then have a slightly longer clock than a sample that fills the last spot, which might result in more of a 3 week to 4 week turnaround time. It all depends on when we fill the queue in that whole window. So there are going to be variations depending on how many kits you buy and how often you send them in. You'll get some a little bit early and some that'll take the full time length. That's because of the way it's being processed carefully. Once all that data is back, on this sheet right here, or this page, you'll see kind of levels. And at this point in time, you can see we've gone through the registered, the received, processing, and completed. If this weren't finished, you would get indications on whether or not it's been received by the lab, whether it's processing, and then when it's completed. There's also an email. So keep an eye out looking for emails that come from nbresults.com. Because those will be the emails that keep you up to date on where your kit is or where your client's kits are. Now that it's available, you can see I go to view my DNA report. Before we do that, however, let's go look at some of the other features on this website, because we're gonna end up on the report. Some of the features are right here, where we register our DNA kit. Well, here's the dropdown. We register my DNA kit definitions and guides, and then help me with my DNA kit. This first one, when I just click on it, takes you to some of the science behind what we're doing, the human genome, and why we're sequencing everything and then pulling out genes that are actionable as it relates to nutritional or cellular processes that we can have influence over. So keep in mind, there's much, much more sequence we gather, but we really want to execute on those sequences that are actionable by us in a natural products way or a clinical way. And that's why you'll see there's about 1,500 genes on the report. Why is your genome unique, or how is it unique? How can it affect your health? These are simple content that you can, and you guys feel free to take some of this and use it in your clinic to create a blog post or an Instagram or, anything you guys want to do. This is really great information that allows you to get the message out to your database as a clinician to encourage your patients to really embrace this idea of DNA testing in a very secured, confident, and accurate way. Because that's the biggest deal. There are a lot of companies out there offering things, and you just don't know what you're getting in all those cases. This is an example of report. We're going to get more into that. There's nature versus nurture in DNA, in our DNA genetics, as well as our epigenetics. And then finally, our disclaimer report. So there's an example of a description or content that you can refer to. We've got the My DNA Definitions Guide. So this gives you an idea of what is a PubMed ID, what is an RSID. These are things you'll find on the report, and it gets really complicated really quickly. So we've created some tools for you to maybe navigate that for those of you that really want to start diving in. And here's a report that is just a guide. This isn't an actual report, it's a guide. So again, remember, it's under this DNA tag, and we can gather the information out of here. The PubMed ID and the RSID, just to be real quick, and I know it's a lot, but these are things that are identifiers on the human genome, the SNPs, or these mutations that have been studied clinically to identify the SNP and as it relates to the clinical outcome. For example, we've all heard of the methylation gene, the MTHFR gene. It can also be ID'd by an RSID number, as well as linking it back to a PubMed ID where you can learn about the research that's been done on methylation. And we can take a quick look at that one for sure. So here's an example guide, and you can look under here. We've given you the detox. Here's the detox guide. Actually, I jumped the gun. I'm too used to this. I apologize. This looks a lot like the report, but what this actually is a description of how the report was built, what it entails, and what kind of information is contained in the report. There are 12 major, not traits, but 12 major categories that we've identified in the genetic profiling. We have cardiometabolic, cellular health, detox, energy performance, general health, hologenomics, hormone, immune, inflammation, neuro, nutrition, and weight optimization. These are the general categories that we're looking at in the DNA. Under each one of these categories are what we call traits. And the first thing you'll notice is we have an overview description of the cardiometabolic genetic panel. Why are we looking at this genetic panel? What kind of genes are in the genetic panel? And how do they influence the aspect of genetics as it relates to your cardiovascular? What are your risks? What are your possibilities? What are your potentials? And how do we manage those risks and potentials using things like nutrition? It's broken down further into what we call traits: blood clotting, coronary artery, diabetes, heart attack. So for example, if you click on diabetes, these are then now the risk or the genes that are associated with metabolic diseases such as diabetes, blood glucose metabolism, lipid metabolism in many ways, insulin metabolism, and so on. And so again, we have another description that describes some of these genetic influences on our gene expression and how it relates to this. And then under each one of these, you can see the gene name. So ADIPOQ. I don't expect everyone to learn these quickly. It's a really complicated. What you need to know is how to navigate this report, and then we will help you derive the outcome from the report. We've built that in for you. So this looks really intimidating at this level, even to me. I mean, there's so many genes that are involved in certain processes. We've distilled that down and done the work for you to give you actionable ways to address the client's needs. But those of you that want to get into the classwork and the learning, this is the RSID number, which identifies the SNP in the gene. And then this is the PMID, which gives you the articles for the clinical studies as it relates to this gene. So it is a reference guide with all of the validations that people may or may not need if they come into your office. Let's jump back because we're currently in cardiometabolic, which is the first one. Something's probably more relatable if we come in here to detox and we can look at all of the detoxification pathways: alcohol, altered drug response, high homocysteine levels, acetylation pathway, glucuronidation pathway. Some of these words you might remember or recognize. These are all pathways that help us get rid of toxins in the liver and the kidney. Of course, methylation pathway is the most familiar. So we click on that, and we know that in the phase 2 detoxification, methylation is one of the important pieces to this. And here are the genes that are of course associated with this: BHMT, MTHFS, MTR, MTRR, MTHFR. And there's actually more than one mutation in MTHFR and MTRR. So you can see it's a full-fledged panel that relates to methylation. This right here is an educational tool to navigate the DNA process as well as the DNA information that comes out. So it's here for learning, it's here for reference, it's here for if you have particular questions that you want to refer back to us, because we are going to be available, and we're going to have for the next few months, we have that free consulting as part of the DNA kit. So we want to take advantage of these things so that you guys can learn quickly and have this be an integral part of your clinic and how you service your clients. You won't learn it overnight, so do not get frustrated. Do not try to worry about it becoming overwhelming, because that is a challenge. I'm only concerned about these two, the dashboard and the DNA. We've gone through the DNA. Let's go back to the dashboard. Let's go back to my reports. And now let's look at my report. So here we go. We have a report. We'll call it DNA Blueprint. There's a quick description of your DNA blueprint. We have the combination of traits, variants, and SNPs. And the languaging isn't terribly difficult, but let's be clear. Traits are something that become a phenotype, like how tall you are, how many freckles you have, what color your eyes are. And then variants are changes in the DNA. And if a change alters the DNA in a way that you alter the trait, this becomes a mutation or a deviation from normal, and it can affect the way the liver functions, or a liver enzyme, or a kidney enzyme, or a neurological dopamine receptor, et cetera. These are things that impact us from a nutritional or a health perspective. SNPs are a single nucleotide polymorphism, which means that the alteration in your DNA happened at one particular site, and there can be more than one in a gene, but this is why we have to sequence the DNA in order to understand the implications of your changes. If we don't know what a normal healthy DNA looks like, we can't very well understand what a polymorphism looks like. And we now have that data. So we can look across these genes and identify the SNPs and then categorize how they impact us from a health standpoint. So I know there's some languaging here that you'll get used to if you're not already. I presume that, we want to keep reinforcing these languages so that we get more used to how we're asking and answering questions. Now that we're in the report, we can say, okay, a process. And what I ought to do first, and I'm remiss for not doing this with you. So let's take a break from this report briefly, because I think I want to try something with you guys to give you the confidence to get back there. As I mentioned, we buy and deal with the learning of the actual outcome of the report on the SFI or the Systemic Alimentum website. So let's jump back to that website, because we will return to this report, but let's do something in chronological order. And I apologize for not doing this before. If you go to the website, even if you haven't logged in, under practitioner resources, you can see we now have a directory or a MyDNA webinar, and we have a practitioner's guide to MyDNA. Now, this presumes you've already been in, logged in, you've bought it, you've given it to the patient registered it, went through the NB results to the point where they have a report, or prior to that. So we've also brought this information to you on the systemic website. And this is the information that can help you guide you and your patients through the process of registering, what is it? Why do I need it? How I go through the process of registering and so on. So let's look at that really briefly. What is MyDNA? Well, it's right here. We have a small video for you describing what it is and why it's important and why it impacts our health. Why should you and your patients use the MyDNA? Well, we can start to personalize wellness quite significantly. We offer the comprehensive genetic analysis, not a chip-based one. We then provide tailored supplementation. And this really is a way to proactively target health from the point in which you identify your DNA weaknesses, your DNA possibilities. You move forward proactively to change all this. Here you can see now we have the process of selling it to your patient. They register their kit, which we've touched on. They collect their sample, they send it for sequencing, and then they review that in their report. We've already gone through this. These are the various steps. And now again, I encourage you to not only read this information, but cut and paste it into your own marketing, your own education in your clinic, in your social media, in places where you want to drive the interest of your patients into this world and really not just navigate, but get them excited about the potential here. So we have a lot of content for you to use just right here on this website. Now, in order to view the DNA that we're going to go view in a second, there's a number of steps you can take on the NBA site or the NB results site. And those are: the patient downloads the DNA, and we'll go look at that in a second. They then email the file to the practitioner. The practitioner logs into the NB results. I keep saying that too fast, and I'm referring to the wrong company. Uploads the shared MyDNA file. So it seems complicated. It's quite simple. They log in. There's a button right below the My Report that says download your report. It downloads it. They drop it into an email. They email it to you. You then log into the NB results and you upload that file, and you can see their DNA. From there, you can either interpret it if you've got some level of confidence and experience, or the next step is you can email it into our sales team, and they will open it up and make recommendations off the report, which I'll give you in a minute. This is the uploading, downloading. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this, although it seems complicated, we're doing this because it protects the DNA of every person. Your DNA does not become compromised. It's only being shared by the patient and the clinician. There is no other access to this DNA by companies or otherwise. So it's one of the more protective ways to do this. Again, your patient's My DNA report. We can share it. We could also call your sales representative and you can share it with them once you've emailed it to them, or even, yes, email it to them and they can share it. And then we can make recommendations off of a protocol recommender that we have. We've outlined it here because even as brilliant as a job I've just done for you to try to, go through this step, it's quite lengthy. And so anytime that I've spoken too fast or been unclear, it's right here under the practitioner resources, practitioner's guide to My DNA, that you can follow to help your patients get the DNA to you. And then you can get that to us for the last step of recommendation. If the languaging isn't enough, we have created 8 videos for your viewing pleasure. And again, these can be shared with your patient without question. They can watch it. They can see what they need to do. They can see what benefits they get. And they can also learn through all this how we navigate the DNA report as a clinician, so they can feel comfortable as you either do that with them remotely or you do that with them live. These videos can help you navigate and make you a better educator for them. Okay. So just watch these videos. They're not very long. You can see the longest one here is just over 6 minutes. It also allows you to be so informed that you can, when you do schedule a consult with our genetics team, you're going to have the ammunition to ask the right questions, to get the right answers more quickly, because you've had a little bit of education on this side. And that's what we want to do. We want to build your confidence, build the education, and smooth out these bumps. We certainly want you guys to succeed in this. So this again is on the Systemic Alimentum website. And we can go all through all these steps. This really is what guides you as clinicians through the process of getting the DNA to the client or the patient, and them getting it back to you as a report, so that then we can process it through your salesperson here. What's the last step in this? I think what I'm going to do is skip a slight step. We're going to go back and spend some time on the report itself as a clinician. So we're going to keep our marketing hat off and our business, or our marketing hat on and our business hat on, and discuss the last piece with this, which is what we call the recommendations. And then we'll put our clinic hat back on at the very end of this and go back to the report and kind of deep dive into what the DNA is telling us, what we're learning from it, and how we're doing that. While I'm here, just remember that once all these transactions have made and you have a patient's DNA report, you then email it to your sales rep, and they will run it through what we call our recommender. Now, this is a software that we built that takes our high scores and process them into the products or the nutrients that person might need. And that's, again, outlined here, but it's the last step in this entire journey that you need to understand or help navigating. And the first time you do it will be the only time you'll need to say, fantastic. I got it to my salesperson. They opened it up. They gave me the recommendations. We discussed them briefly, and off and running you are. And if you want to go deeper, that's allowable. We have consults. But this is the most rapid way to go from really complicated data to an outcome of, here are the products for your DNA journey, all done using your DNA data. And it uses the high scores in your DNA report. And that's important because as I go through this DNA report, you're going to see an actual report where we have high, medium, low, and even some superpowers. The mathematics we use to give you guys the data on your final report, the recommender for the product, is only based on the high scores, which is whether you like the language of risk or potential, or any languaging you want to use. The high scores are the ones that need our attention the most, genetically speaking. So let's go back now and take a look at that report. Now we're going to put our clinic hat on, our clinician's hat on. Say, okay, I have a report. I've been sent this by my patient. I log into NB results. I can now view it because I've uploaded it. And you can see this is the download, the report, and you can download my DNA data. So this is for the patient to say, okay, I want to download it. They do that here. It creates the email and sends it to you. And then you can upload that and look at it in this same window on my DNA or NB results. So that's what I've done. I've taken someone else's DNA, uploaded it, and now I'm looking at it. And you can see there's cardiometabolic, cellular, and all the categories that we talked about. So we have the traits, the variants, and the SNPs. If I drop it down now, instead of it just being the educational version, you can now see it's got scores. So for this particular person, we've got high scores on blood clotting, coronary artery disease, and diabetes. We've got low on these others. We've got medium. For the most part of your clinical practice, we focus on the high scores. Because as you recall, this is a genetic test, which means these high scores will be with these people for the rest of their lives. They need to be mindful and cognizant of the impact of these things forever, not just for a moment, not just when they're stressed, but it's a lifelong concentration. And we can look at some more. Let's deep dive into cellular health. We look at cellular health. Oh, wow. No high scores for this person on cellular health. I want to point out a few things. All these mediums may or may not target or warrant your intervention, but they may, because if you get someone that has already experiencing bladder issues or breast issues, other risk factors. I want to give you an analogy that you can give to your patients. I've liked it. I didn't create it. I've just heard it. DNA is like a loaded gun, and it's the environmental triggers that pull the trigger. So the gun is loaded, but other factors have to pull the trigger. When you think about that, all of our high risk are simply risks until something else pulls that trigger and creates a real problem for people. And it's the triggers we worry about once we're knowledgeable about the DNA loaded gun piece. And another way to think of it is your DNA is about 30 to 40% of your risk. The 60 to 70% is all based on external forces, lifestyle, toxins, stress, and other factors that trigger the DNA to either be positive or negative and influence that, what we call the expression or genetic expression outcome. So it's something very important, and yet we have some power over this, some leverage. So in this particular panel, if I was reviewing it, I'd say I can be mindful of some of these things, but I don't need to be overly concerned about these cellular health genetic panel. Let's look at detox for this person. Oh, goodness. Now, the detox, of course, this looks at all the various pathways that can be impacted genetically by our detoxification. And right off the bat, I'm looking at the glucuronidation pathway, which is one of the phase 2 liver pathways. I'm also looking at the glutathione conjugation, again, phase 2. And then, of course, nicotine addiction. So I need to know a little bit more about my patient. Have they already picked up things like smoking or vaping? Because it's a consideration that I need to now be aware of, because they have genetic predisposition for that. Have they already pulled the trigger in that case? But more importantly, let's check out some of these things, the glucuronidation and the glutathione. Both of these are going to have some really interesting genes in there. Under the glutathione conjugation pathway, we have the GSR, the GPX, 1 and 4, GSS, GST. Without having to learn about these proteins or these enzymes, I can tell you that this person is going to need additional glutathione support. So in my case, it would clearly indicate the detoxigenic formulation, because glutathione is something they're already struggling with from a genetic perspective. And if there's anything else like exposure to toxins, exposure to stress, they're driving their glutathione pools down. Therefore, between the genetics and whatever's happening in their life, they're going to need glutathione support, significant glutathione support, depending on what else is going on. So clearly you can see how your genetics can be so influential on the guidance that a clinician would give. In this case, we've been managing, and we've always known about the demand on our glutathione and oxidative stress pathways. Just as natural products people, we've known for a very long time, we have to be aware of behaviors, aware of exposures, whether it be plastics, PCBs, heavy metals, emotional stress, and so on. We've always known about these things. And glutathione became one of the tools we'd use. But now when you are looking at the DNA and you're talking to your patient at the same time, you get to say, you know what? One of the reasons why glutathione is important in your journey to wellness is because your genes don't manage glutathione as well as someone who doesn't have these mutations in their genes. You're not optimal. We need to support your genetic output, your genetic code, for example. And it's that language, it's that bit that is so exciting about DNA, because I don't know how many people we've sold and or clinically worked with on glutathione. I even did a small clinical study on glutathione and tried to bring up blood levels of glutathione for people. And it took a lot for some people. There were some people it took over 30 days for me to see their glutathione in their blood to raise to a significant level that was going to be beneficial to those people. Now that I'm looking at the DNA of these similar or same people that we used to do studies on, I have my answer. Some people need more glutathione for longer periods of time and more often because of their genetic code, because of their genetic blueprint. They need this. And we need to know that they need this, which is why this is such a powerful tool. So this is one great example I hope that you guys can really resonate with. I hope this says, wow, all those people that we give glutathione to, and some responded quickly, some took months. This is the answer to that. Some need it more often. They take it for a while, then they stop, and then they don't feel well again, or they feel like they become chemically sensitive, or mold sensitive is another good example. This is one of the reasons why that's happening to them, is they have a phase 2 limitation genetically, which means they need more glutathione support than somebody else, than even like a partner or their friends, whomever. This is the reason why they might need it. And this is a great example as to why this report and this deep dive into your genetics is so personally powerful. Every once in a while, you're going to get a superpower. And these numbers will change a little bit because the more data we get in our gene information, the clinical studies that come out with particular genes, we will update those. And so superpowers are really essentially genetics. Remember, genetics, we're looking at a normal gene, comparing it to a hindered gene, which would give you a high score, a gene that doesn't do well. That would warrant the high and mediums. But let's say you have a gene or an enzyme that is functioning better than a normal population, you're going to get a superpower. So for example, the alcohol dehydrogenase, if you look at alcohol dehydrogenase in populations like the Native Americans, they're going to have a high score here because they're genetically not designed to metabolize alcohol, which is why alcohol is such a high risk factor for that population. Whereas people from Scandinavia or just Europe in general have a much, much greater ability to metabolize alcohol, which means they can drink more and not feel the repercussions. And I'm not advocating alcohol, by the way. The data is out there that no more than one drink a week is ideal. If you go beyond that, you're putting your brain at risk. That's just the data. It's not a judgment. It's not a personal thing, but just be mindful that alcohol is in general not good for us more than one drink a week. So, but for people that have alcohol sensitivity, that not good for you recommendation goes way, way up. And your DNA test would tell you that. So this is so much fun. I hope you guys, I don't want to bore you with the details, but what I want to get you excited about is the fact that it's brilliant for what we want to do. This one's energy performance. In many ways, this is really great for cellular metabolism and or even macro like muscle recovery. I don't have time to get into those in too much depth. Hologenomics is exciting because it's how we relate to our microbiome. So there's some really interesting things in here on celiac, Crohn's. These are the genetic components to celiac disease and Crohn's disease and fungal infections. We need to know about these things because you guys are seeing patients constantly. And I have to say, fungal is a growing trend. So is celiac, so is Crohn's. Part of that is the loaded gun of genetics, and we're complicating that by our dietary choices, our lack of microbiome population or abundance and diversity. We can see the path we're on. You guys all are living it on a daily basis. The journey that your patients are on is a journey that we need to turn around. We need to do a 180 on these people. And one of the ways in which you can really empower them is through DNA testing. And just by looking at this, right? A lot of these, like celiac and Crohn's, we have blood tests, we have muscle tests, we have stool, the blue poop pill, all of these together between the DNA, the blue poop, and then of course symptoms and maybe other testings. You now have 4 things in your toolbox saying, here's the deal. We need to turn your gut around, and we need to do it now because you are headed towards a serious crisis if we don't fix you now. So that's the superpower. That's the fun part with it, right? Fungal infection, same thing. Although this particular person, hey, they inherited a genetic low fungal infection susceptibility, which is fantastic for them, right? Not everybody gets that handout. We can look at things like neurocognitive. This is an important one. This is the oh so popular APOE, sorry. This is the one that when you have the APOE and you have the certain traits, the certain SNPs in the APOE2, 4, and that, whether it's hetero or homozygous, again, languaging you'll pick up on if you don't already know. It isn't as common in the population, but if you have it, you are at a much greater risk to develop early onset Alzheimer's. It's better to know when you're younger than it is to wait. So again, the genetics allows you to tell them that. You can see Alzheimer's disease for this particular person who we will not name. You can see these are all of the genetics that go into this trait. And some of these things you might remember, BDNF. These are things you've probably seen maybe in your other reading. Let's see another one that might pop out to you. MTHFD, right? There's an associated genetics that you might have heard about. There's a lot here. You don't need to learn each gene, but it is here as your reference if you'd ever want to go check it out. I think another one that we can look at, mental decline, that's cognitive impairment, Parkinson's. There's genetic implications. These are not the only implications, that these genetic implications can be managed through nutrition and lifestyle interventions. I know I've said that more than once, but I don't mind repeating myself. Something that's really kind of fun, but just as important to talk about is the last 2, nutritional regulation and weight optimization. So here we go. Nutritional regulation. This is going to be all of your deficiencies as it relates to your vitamins, your omega-3s, your other nutrients, right? Nutrient compounds, phytochemicals. You can see they all line up here. Now, some of these are included in other panels as they affect whether detox, your methylation affects detox, omega-3 can affect cognitive and so on. But right here, you can immediately see from their genetics whether they have increased calcium levels. They need to be careful of having too much calcium in their diet. They probably need to up their magnesium. You can see we have some people will show iron deficiency. Some people might show omega-3 deficiency. This particular person has an omega-3 deficiency. These are the genes that are involved in omega-3 processing, utilization, uptake. So we need more omega-3 in this person because they don't have all the tools to efficiently bring in omega-3 and process omega-3 to where it needs to go. So we want to be mindful of this particular person to increase their omega-3 uptake. And then the others, you just navigate them. You can see some things are more susceptible than others, and every person's different. This is a personalized journey for each and every patient that you go through. So it's my goal to keep educating on this topic, keep creating the efficiencies, keep getting you guys excited to go through this so that it becomes faster, it's more routine, the patient benefits in a shorter amount of time, your clinic benefits because it becomes more efficient for you to go through this. Every month we move forward, I want this to get more familiar, more rapid, and I want the clinics to benefit and really turn this around into something exciting. Now, weight optimization. We've got metabolic syndrome, obesity, overeating, poor saturated fat, sweet tooth, and weight loss, body composition. This person doesn't have any highs here, which is fantastic for them. There's some other data points I've looked at where they do have highs here, but I can also tell you this person is relatively, they don't struggle from their actual physique. They don't struggle from any of these. So their genes are in line with who they are and what they look like at the moment. And it doesn't mean they can't go down a path, but right now they look good from a metabolic standpoint. So that's good. But I can always look at these and keep track of them over time, look at the person and say, okay, we don't really need to worry about metabolic syndrome genetically, but how do we look from a microbiome standpoint? Because remember, microbiome is now probably over 50% of the impact on metabolic issues, and genetics are still only 30 to 40%. So we still need to look at other things while we're using this tool, this very powerful tool, but a tool nonetheless. There's our journey. Now, I'm going to do a quick summary because I've spent quite a bit of time poking around this. So first and foremost, let's summarize. You go to Systemic and Alimentum's website and you go to the dashboard here, okay? And you go down under practitioner resources. You can log in or not log in. You can't buy anything unless you're logged in. And you go to practitioner's guide. Anything you see, watch, we tried to keep things short. You go to this practitioner's guide, which is this. Review this again. I encourage you to review this again because it walks you through the stages and the steps. It preps you. It's not complicated and it's very insightful. It also offers you these little nuggets of information that you can use with your staff, with your patients to put the message out there because I want you to put the message out there. Go through viewing your report, buying the kit, using the kit, and viewing your report. Go to the videos, watch each one of those. Make sure that you've watched them enough and your staff's watched them so it becomes a really simple process for you. If you have questions, you reach out to us and we are here to answer those questions. Once you've navigated this and you feel comfortable, during that period of time when you buy a kit, send it out, you have a 4-week plus window to learn this stuff by the time the data comes back. When it comes back, you have to log into the NB results platform, right? The website. And this is where you can go to their dashboard, your own, and when you upload reports here, this is how you go to and navigate those. So you go to my reports. You can view it or view shared my DNA report. This is critical. As a clinician, when you receive the downloaded report, you then go to view shared DNA report that gives you access. And that also reminds you, hey, I want to send this shared to the sales staff and have them give me the protocol based on this DNA. We've spent years refining that process. It will eventually become accessible more efficiently to you, but right now it's a stepwise process, but we can keep it simple. Once the salesperson reviews that or uploads that DNA into the algorithm, it takes all the high scores, just the high scores, and it gives the protocoling to that person, and then that can be given right back to the clinician to protocol for the patient. It is simple. It's a few steps. Review them. Once you've done it 1 or 2 times, this is going to become really simple for all of you. So I hope I haven't oversimplified. I hope I haven't overcomplicated in this process. but here we are. And then from our perspective, we're going to continue to do webcasts and videos to educate you on these and to really point out some of the more critical varying DNA outcomes we're getting so that you can learn about important features to the DNA above zinc deficiencies or calcium or iron or B2 or even some of the more generalized genetics that we need to know, because then those are easy to accommodate through supplements. But there's even more amazing ones, like, for example, LPA. So LPA is one of the markers in the blood, similar to HDL, LDL, VLDLs, and it can be correlated directly to your genes. So the levels of LPA that you might see in someone's blood labs, there is a gene that we have on our panel that would tell you that they are genetically inclined to have a higher level. Once you know that, you work diligently with that patient to manage those LPA levels, because they are impactful to their future cardiovascular risk. And they can be managed by nutritional interventions, by practitioners in our world. There is a protocol to do that. And that's the exciting piece to this. So imagine I've given you one example, LPA. I've given you another example of methylation. I gave you the glutathione example. Each and every one of these nuggets that we can keep doing examples on give you a protocol and a tool driven by DNA that will transform your clinic and patient into the future of personalizing your approach to them. It's very exciting. And hopefully I've conveyed that enough. But again, I'm going to keep producing videos. Some of his name's Derek, the geneticist, is going to do some with me. So we will keep educating you on not only nuggets of DNA information, but even generalized information. And then you'll get the protocoling through our product recommender, is what we call it. That's going to streamline it. That'll push it out for you first and foremost. And then, of course, as you learn more DNA, we can really navigate that more efficiently. We built the tools. We're excited. We want to bring them to you and make them efficient. And we want you guys to build your clinics. It's exciting. And that's pretty much a wrap up. So it's really a training on DNA. I hope that most of what I said came across, but visit the websites, dig in, and you're going to love it. It's every time I go in there, I learn something new, and I can relate to it with a practitioner that just asked me a question. I had a phone call about the LPA. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have data for you. Glutathione, metabolic syndrome, etc. Fungal, right? Fungal infections. When a patient comes back and they have a high risk for fungal infections and they are coming to you because they have mold toxicity, wow, we not only need to work on this, but we need to work on this for the rest of your life. We need to do this. So lots of fun that you guys can have fun with. I'm going to turn it back over to Matt at this point. And again, we're there for you. We're ready to start answering questions, tackling these problems, and getting DNA kits out into the world. Appreciate your time.
All right, guys. One more thing, actually, Shayne, before you leave, because we don't have too much time to do a lot of the Q&As, and don't worry, we'll actually get those answers out to you, because we have like 20 something questions that came through.
Goodness.
So
I
if you guys put a question in, don't worry about it. We're going to get you those answers. But I know one that I saw a lot, they were asking a lot about the security. And I know that we've jumped through a lot of hoops to make sure that this is all HIPAA. And can you go over that really quickly?
That's great. Yes, I tried to do it. It's complicated, but I did it too fast. Okay. So how it works is, one of the reasons that you see us with the NB Results website, and then that's got to be managed by the person that owns the DNA, which is the patient. The reason for that is one of the security options. So when you get the kit and you have a barcode, you guys will see them. If you've bought a kit, you open it up, there's a barcode, it's an ID. There's a QR code that you scan if you're the person registering the kit. You register that kit, you use your identification called the barcode. That barcode goes in the system for the sequencing, the reporting, and the logging back into the NB results. That is a critical step that is the only place we can revisit. The patient can revisit who owns it. Once that's registered, neither me nor NB Results nor Matt or anybody knows whose that kit is. It is now anonymous after that. The only way, so if you get a patient and they forget to register their kit, but they swab, send it in, which also meant the barcode went with it, and they call you up and say, okay, I've sent in my DNA kit, but I don't have my barcode and I didn't register on the website, so I don't even have my own login credentials. It's done. We have no way of recovering that DNA because we don't have any access to that DNA. That is just the person that sent it in and their login information. So be very careful as you coach these guys to turn in their DNA, to do it in a stepwise process. It's so secure that if they don't do it right, you got to buy a new kit because we can't retrieve that. It is only retrievable by their login and their barcode. And once they do that, then they can share it. So the other reason we did the share file is because they're giving you, through sharing their DNA with you as a practitioner, they're giving you authority now over their DNA, just like they would have to over their blood labs or their MRI or their CAT scan. That is the handshake to a clinician to where now you can use it. Okay. But it is, please remember to follow all the steps, because if something gets lost, we can't retrieve that DNA because we don't have access to it. We have access to supplying you the data by the windows, but we don't know whose it is. So unless they can log in, we can't even fix it for you. It's a whole new test kit at that point.
So basically it's as safe as it gets.
Yeah, it's really secure, so much so that if someone goofs up, we can't help them. So yeah.
I know I've actually been working with a lot of clients already who, some were part of the beta, some of them have used, an old DNA test, which wasn't very, some of the companies right now, they kind of give you the bare minimum, but, I've been working with them. Some of them are actually family members where, fatty liver disease, she lost 30 pounds weight, still had fatty liver. And the doctor's like, well, that's not normal because she lost all that weight. Turns out she had a PEMT gene, which had to do with choline metabolism, or the ability to make choline when you're not eating food, right? You got to be able to make it if you're not getting it from food. So your body usually makes it. But she had one of the worst versions of a bunch of polymorphisms that had to do with her PEMT gene. And so I was like, well, why don't you just go out and, we have supplements for it. But for this situation, I was like, just eat some runny egg yolks, every day. Try to eat it every day, twice a day. And lo and behold, 3 months later, when she had her next appointment with her doctor, he was like dumbfounded. He's like, where the heck did this, where did your fatty liver go? Like, this is not normal. And she's like, well, my son, well, now you guys know it's my mom. So my son told me to get a DNA test. And so, now she doesn't have that problem anymore. And that's just from this DNA. And I really encourage you guys to combine this with the microbiome, because our whole approach is genetic and microbiome. We can make massive improvements in physiology using this genetic test, but we know that the microbiome is a massive piece in how genetics, they interact with each other, right? And Shayne's talked about that before, and he'll be making more videos like that too. So keep that in mind as you're using this in your practice, that the genetics and the microbiome is they're the perfect couple. Lifetime marriage couple, the two things that make a human who they are. That is the human blueprint. So really focus on, utilizing the genes in the roadmap, which is the microbiome, and send your results over. If I'm your representative, send them over to me. I'll get those, your results over to you really quickly and go through there. And if we need to talk to our, geneticists, PhD level geneticists, and that's not normal to get. I know we don't have too much time, Shayne. Do you know how much time we have to do for questions and answers? If you want to go,
let's answer a few more of the easy ones, but and the ones that need to be answered. Like if you order a DNA kit for a client, where their results be sent to us or them or just them. Okay, so during the login phase of the NB results, the clinician will not get the results. Those go back to the NB result website. The patient has the login information. They log in, and when they log in, they can share that DNA with you with that little share button that I showed you on the dashboard. So you might need to say to your patient, okay, they say, hey, my DNA results are back. You as a clinician say, great. log in, share them with me, and we can go over them. But that again, that's the security where they have to share them with you so that we're not violating any security breaches in that sense. As someone said, do we need a separate login? Yes, absolutely. All the clinicians need their own login, because in order for you to view not only your own DNA or your 100 clients of DNA, you need to be logged into NB results to see those, because as you recall, it's a complicated report. And you need to be logged in to see that, because there's no other softwares that will run that report except inside NB results. So you'll need your own login, and then you can look at any DNA that's sent to you. And if you guys want to just test it out, get a hold of your sales rep and we can send you a tester DNA so you can log in and check it out. There's ways to have fun with this, even as you're learning to get this process off the ground. I think those are the ones that were really, I should have really covered while I was doing this.
Well, some of them are pretty quick and easy. Someone was asking about COMT, interleukin genes. I'm pretty sure we do those, TNF.
Yes.
Yeah.
So anybody that, I didn't go over them, but there's 1,500 SNPs in here, which means there's 1,500 genes that we look at almost. Well, not quite, but there's a number of SNPs on the same genes, but each and every one of those affects every system that we could address clinically, right? They were actionable clinically from a nutritional standpoint. So there's going to be a lot of immune genes. There's going to be a lot of neurological genes, metabolic genes, methylation, comp, managing not only our detoxification, but the processing of things like neurotransmitters or neurochemicals. These are all part of the genetic makeup, and we will add more over the years. So, this is the beginning of this journey. We're going to keep adding more every year to improve and keep up with current sciences, which is also why it's exciting, because years ago, if we'd launched this, it just wasn't there. So even though the delay is very painful, it is better timing because the clinical research is there. Now the tools are there, so we can do much better sequencing for much more affordable prices, and so on. 10 years ago, this would have cost well over $900 to do. So we've been able to bring costs down and look at more data. So yeah, there has been some benefits for the wait, even though I agree the wait is painful. What else did you see in here, Matt? Anything else?
They're all, some of them too, like I had there's somebody here asking about using it with labs. If you guys are running a practice a certain way, you have a certain niche, just give us a call. I think Carrie in the questions was actually asking about how using labs, like, okay, well, they have, homocysteine's high, right? And in our genetic test, you could use MTHFR, to see those correlations. And they were asking if there was a way to look at blood work and utilize the DNA and the blood work together. And that obviously is a yes, but that's going to be more of a intricate, reach out to your rep type thing. Because even if your rep doesn't know, I'm within earshot to a bunch of experts that can give me that answer, Shayne being one of them, right? So keep that in mind. We had another question that had to do with the superpowers. And I think
let's
went over it, but
yeah, I did a little bit. I can reach back. I did see another question that I just glanced over where someone was asking about registering their DNA kits for their patients. No, have the patient register it, because that's how it works in order to keep everything secure and compliant. And if you register someone else's kit, the system's not going to know over time who that belongs to. This keeps the kit assigned to the person in their DNA. That link gets broken if someone's registering other kits, and then, we can't break that link. So make sure each patient registers their kit so that DNA is tied to them and no one's doing that for them, because it could break that link. And then there's no way to combine those people again to their data. In terms of the superpowers, superpowers they're an exciting category. And in some ways they're actually, as we get more data, some of the superpowers will, for some people that might be on the edge, because remember, this is we used thousands of genomes to calculate whether you're on the risky end, or you're in the middle, or you're on the superpower end, which, fewer things are. And what that means is it's a fun term, but essentially what it means is you don't have any risk factors, and you may even have a little bit of genetic strength when it comes to that. And so you'll see superpowers in categories like we saw that one in alcohol, right? So if you compare genetics of certain ancestral backgrounds versus other, or you might even have an uncle or an aunt, just to be a little bit, loose here, that can handle their liquor and someone else that can't. The superpower is that they metabolize alcohol more rapidly than someone else. I wouldn't call that a superpower. It's not exactly what, you don't want someone to know that. You don't want them drinking, but the point is the same. Genetically, there's things that you might have on your DNA output that gives you a slightly better edge than the average or the baseline, which is that's really what it's being measured off. It's being measured off the average of the population versus what you might have a slightly better. You guys maybe have heard the caffeine gene. So how well do you metabolize caffeine in the liver? Well, there's essentially two stages of that. You can have a high metabolizer or a low metabolizer. Well, if you love coffee, your superpower would be high metabolism because you can have up to 4 cups of coffee. If you're a low metabolizer and you don't like coffee, that might be your superpower. In our case, superpowers are just above average genetic predisposition is what that means. It falls into, like I said, there's muscle recovery. There's some other gene traits that it falls into, but you won't see it as much on your reports. And it's a talking point, but you don't really do a whole lot about superpowers because you don't have to worry about them. Yeah, it's like, great, I got a superpower. It's fun to talk about. It's a great way to break the ice with a client too. It's like, oh my gosh, we really need to work on your detox pathway, but hey, you've got a superpower over here. That's exciting. Gets everybody engaged in this process. In my opinion, it's fun to talk about. Hopefully that answered. Anything else, you guys, I promise we'll get back with you. And there might even be some of these questions that are answered on the websites. So please visit NB Results as well as the Systemic Alimentum website. Go to the DNA tools. Won't take you long. And if and anything above and beyond that, like Matt said, we'll take care of you.
Yeah. And remember, these are available now. Like you can literally call in and order these. You can go on the website and order these. And I highly recommend taking advantage of it, especially now until the end of the year. Because currently, right now, so Derek and Shayne have been doing a lot of videos, right? They're the experts in DNA, here. We got a lot of experts. But right now, when you're ordering these DNA kits until January of next year, you actually will get a free consultation with that PhD level geneticist. So any kit that you buy right now is going to have a super high value in what you're going to do, especially when it comes to the learning curve for this. So make sure to keep in touch with me, keep in touch with your rep, whoever it is. This DNA kit's ready to fly.
Yeah, fantastic. But well, thank you all. I think that's it for me.
Send you an email for the winner of this because we've had a lot of attendees today. And so we'll send out an email. We'll figure out from the raffle here who won the free DNA test kit and the 5 blue poos. So, keep track of your email there. Watch your email to see if you won any of that. And then, like I said, questions, we'll get those back to you and then just reach out to your rep for anything you need. Okay, guys?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Take care, guys. Nice seeing you guys.
See ya.